Good evening, everyone. Y'all know this is the best committee meeting, and I'll say it every single time we meet, because we get to do the true groundwork of what we're here for. So I would like to call our Student Achievement Committee meeting to order, and I will accept a motion to approve the Student Achievement Committee meeting minutes for March 24th.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded, and I will turn it over to Dr. Hill.
Thank you so much, Ms. Gordon. Good afternoon to all of you. This afternoon, we have for Student Achievement Committee 2 items. The first one being a celebration. I think we all appreciate the America 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And so we do have Dr. Ladin Jowers, her team members, Dr. Kendra King, who is our Senior Director for Curriculum Instruction and Assessment, as well as Ms. Rachel Herbert Jones, who is our Senior Administrator for the content area of Social Studies. And then we will have a Title I update by our team from Title I as well. So we're going to begin.
Good afternoon. Today's presentation provides us with an overview and guidance for schools that we can use to commemorate the America 250, which is the celebration of the 250th anniversary for the Declaration of Independence. Our team, as Dr. King shared, under the leadership of Dr. King and Rachel Heber Jones, has developed materials for students, teachers, as well as the community to help explore our nation's history. The resources that we have offer great opportunities for us to reflect on our progress and consider how individual actions can help us to strive towards what we would say and what is written as a more perfect union. Today we will share those highlights and next steps as it relates to this work.
Good afternoon, everyone. The first thing I'd like to do is to engage you in one of the activities that we've provided. So forgive me just a second. I've got a note catcher that will pass out to you, and then I'll explain what it is we'll be up to in just a second.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. King. All right, so this is an activity that American history students, so they'd be about 11th graders, might see in the classroom as they commemorate the 250th anniversary. And so what we would like for you to do is take a moment to brainstorm an object that's in your home that represents your family's American identity. It might be a photo, a tool, a letter, quite literally anything. And then in that first box on that handout, could you please write a real quick reflection where you share with us what that object is and how it represents either continuity or change as it relates to the American journey towards freedom and power. And continuity and change, as you can see at the bottom, are big, strong words in the standard that we're getting at. What's that?
We have like 1 minute.
I didn't start a clock yet, but...
We'll give you about 2 minutes, Mr. Humphrey, okay? Loaded question.
I'll invite you to finish up those last thoughts. And if you're scrambling to write, I'll share with you mine so that we can use this in the next activity. If I had to pick one object, it would be the emblem from a Chevrolet vehicle. In my family, specifically with my father, he was really into old Chevy cars, and I view them as a symbol of continuity because it's one of the large factory systems and brands within our nation that has grown and changed over time and just kind of represents that Midwestern value that I've come from where I grew up as a kid. So what I want to invite you to do briefly is just share a little bit about your object and your reflection. And as you're listening, the boxes down below are an opportunity for the listeners to briefly captures what has been shared and listen for those examples of continuity or change. And there is zero pressure.
I'll go.
Anyone want to go first?
I'll go. My object is a sewing machine. Because my father, before, when he was alive, he was a tailor. And because of his trade, we were able to come to the United States. Under certain immigration rules at that time, they allow people to come in with skilled trades that are underrepresented. So we were able to come here because of his profession. So, yeah.
Thank you.
When you tell me. All right, I got one. This was tough. So the object is my birth certificate, and the reason for that is my dad's side of the family over a century ago moved here and changed our last name to Americanize it from what it was. And my mom is an immigrant, and her family came over after World War II. And so I'm it's the representation of the continuing American dream of people immigrating here and building a life here. That was really tough. Thanks for making me work.
I'll go. I'll share really quickly. This was really hard to think about on the spot. I think my object would be my late grandmother's NAACP lifetime pin. That itself, I think, speaks to the change in America in fighting against violence, racism, affecting policy. There's a list of so much, and she is, was, still is, the rock of our family, and I know I talk about her a lot as, my journey here on the school board, and so that would be my object.
You want to just do this?
Sure.
So my object is aprons. I have a couple of aprons from my, the women elders in my family who have passed away, and you can tell that they were, a repurposed fabric, and they're lovely, but, they were that what do you call that? That practice of, it certainly in the working class, needing to be frugal and repurpose things and make things last. And so it with the American experience, it just makes me think of, they were working class folks, in the 30s and 40s who were farming, maybe not as a career, but lived very simply, and their generations after them, continued to do better and achieve more, at least, financially, some with education, some with trade. So, but that was what came to mind, aprons.
So mine was a folded military flag that sits in a shadow box with the military folder underneath it, photograph, I'm sorry, underneath it. And I guess it went more with, because you wrote continuity and appreciation for American pride and heritage, and just a reminder of those who serve to protect our freedoms.
Much appreciated. So where this activity would move forward to is asking the students to listen for the common themes of continuity and change. And so I'm very much summarizing what is up there on that screen. But did you hear connections in the continuities and the changes that maybe your objects represented? And if you have one, I'd love to hear it. I've got one ready, but I'll let you go first. I'll go first. I got my social studies teacher hat on today. What I heard you all talking about is that progress in working towards improving upon what you have so the next generation can have more than you did. Whether that be by emigrating to the United States, financially moving forward, breaking down barriers, or defending what's already here and ensuring that it lasts for that next generation. That was the continuity that I heard. But for the sake of, yeah. Always here to help. On that note, though, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. King, and then I will come back and chat with you some more in just a little bit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a quick review of what our desired outcomes are for today. And they are to share clear goals and purpose around our American celebration, thoughtful planning that's aligned to school realities, as well as curriculum materials that are always aligned to the standards, and strong communication, which is important, that we're going to share with our schools as well as our community. With everything that we do, we know we have to have it directly support and align with our strategic plan as well as school board policies. This work, the celebration, directly aligns when we're thinking about graduation goals and our equity commitment, as well as development of student knowledge and skills. It also aligns with citizenship and character education, as well as curriculum development expectations that in the policy. So this is not extra work. It is the core of our instructional work. We also have our learning model. This is our framework for teaching and learning. The materials are aligned so that students can see themselves, student identity and belonging. We want it to be, we want to challenge our students with rigorous thinking. These activities allow that. Also for it to engage them where they see that it's relevant and connected to what they're learning and their lives. And then there is a know-me aspect where it is personalized instruction. And we want to ensure that's just that the consistency exists on how we expect teaching and learning to take place across our school district.
So just to ensure that we are aligned, we wanted to kind of share what is the goal and what is the purpose of the America 250 anniversary work. And so we want to make sure that we outline our four core goals, and that's reflection. It's a deeper understanding of what our founding principles are. It is to honor diverse experiences and challenges, as well as Kendra highlighted earlier with our learning model, we want to make sure that we're engaging families, students, as well as staff. We want to make sure that we share that this is not just a history lesson or a review of what we consider to be founding documents and dates, but we want this to be an opportunity that is truly guided to trace the important impact that we have and build upon that, meaning improve upon the founding ideals over this 250-year mark.
So as a team, we identified and considered a lot of logistical considerations to ensure that we developed a process that would best support the schools and the community. The considerations that we had to work with were that the event itself is on the 4th of July, when schools are closed. And so that was problem number one, so to speak. We also needed to consider the fact that end-of-year and beginning-of-year tasks that schools are engaging with at this time of year, and make sure that we design flexible materials to help make sure that they're able to effectively and authentically engage in this commemoration without upending the many, many things that are going on at this time of year. We needed to make sure that we were clear on the understanding that not all high school students are enrolled in a social studies course in a given semester. They may or may not be in a course where this type of work might be being done. We needed to consider the idea of connecting to Constitution Week, but then also recognizing that Constitution Week is also when voter registration is occurring, and not really wanting to bombard staff with multiple initiatives that might be perceived as a lot to carry in 1 week of instruction, especially in the beginning of the school year for our traditional calendars. We also needed to be mindful of any and all of the 50th anniversary activities and communications, because I know that that's a piece that's coming up as well. And then the last part was we had a desire to share and spotlight how our community is celebrating this event more broadly. So we would center what Wake County can do for our community and students and teachers, but also wanting to spotlight what else is going on in our very large school district. So, with those considerations in mind, we aligned our work with the North Carolina Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, and they worked with a group of academics, public historians, and educators to design and develop 3 interpretive themes for their 250 content. And so we have adopted those same 3 themes into our curriculum materials, which are visions of freedom, gathering voices, and common ground. And so the language that you will see up there is from their organization. We've not adjusted it in any way. We've just created materials to support our students, at their variety of instructional levels. So, enclosed on this slide is the actual guidance document, which is linked over there on my left, and it follows the same outline and structure as all the commemorative documents that teachers receive for the other events that we acknowledge throughout the course of the year. One unique feature that we wanted to spotlight, though, is the way in which we've created a framework to implement the America 250 commemoration that has activities for a variety of contexts to provide more flexibility with the standards-aligned materials for both staff and community members. And so when you look up there, you're able to see we've got May and June for the first theme, the week of the 4th of July facing our community, and then July and August again being run by school-based staff to ensure that we're getting all 3 themes and designing it in a way that all of our partners can engage with us and support that work. So we want to show you how these materials are aligned to the 4 goals that we outlined just a little while back. The first goal that we identified was ensuring the opportunity to reflect on our shared history. And so one of the activities in the elementary school level is to participate in an Echoes of Our School installation in which they create a living museum using a tree as an analogy. And so depending on the grade level of the students, they're connecting to it in a variety of ways to think about that common ground that they have as a community within the school. Resources at the elementary and secondary levels also emphasize identifying revolutionary leaders, movements like women's suffrage and the civil rights movement. So finding those common pieces that we all share together in our history. Our second goal was to develop that deeper understanding of our founding principles. And so some key examples here are opportunities for students to create heritage podcasts where they talk to community members or family members and then connect that back to some of their learning into the classroom. Elementary students come at it in a more overarching type of way in creating a freedom patch quilt to represent modern freedoms and connect that back to what's inside of that document. And then 8th graders come at it in a more granular way, and they trace the ideals of the Declaration of Independence into the development and evolution of the North Carolina Constitution. So depending on the grade level, the way in which they'll look at those ideals will vary quite a bit. Our third goal is honoring those diverse experiences and challenges. And so what you see here is a lot of multi-perspective storytelling to ensure that voices, historic and modern, are heard. And we recognize that as a district and as a nation, our story cannot be told through one single lived experience and must be looked at more collectively. Middle schoolers can look at this activity through an unfinished document to look at the original ideas of the Declaration and then begin to apply them to varying historical topics and contexts. And upper elementary school students can look at the stories of struggle and rights in their school's Living Museum projects. The last goal that we identified was engaging students, teachers, and families. And so one way in which we've done this is shared information about the America Gives initiative, that is a national structure that's been created by the America 250 Coalition to engage whole schools in acts of volunteerism like community gardens, food banks, those kinds of things. Additionally, we have oral history projects and an America 250 bingo activity, which if I'm being honest, I'm super jazzed about taking my third grader out to do this summer, where they can explore their community and look for historical connections right here across the district. With all of this, we've developed a communication plan that is structured and phased. We will have principal updates on Wake Connect. We'll have departmental newsletters coming out later this week into the beginning of May. We'll communicate widely with staff across the district and then also with our community messaging in early May. This will ensure that we have alignment across all of our schools, transparency across teachers, students, and the community, as well as community awareness as a whole. That these are tasks and activities that are occurring in schools but can also be supported outside as well. So with that, I'm happy to field any of your questions. All of my colleagues are here as well.
That's right.
But we're so happy to have the opportunity to share all this with you today.
Board members, do you have questions?
I was just brainstorming myself about kind of ideas that individual families can do, during the summer break or whatever. Having like a kind of like a scavenger hunt of important landmarks in North Carolina, because North Carolina is one of the richest historic heritage in regards to our history. So maybe we can send them off for the summer break with an idea for a family, road trip to go and search for these landmarks and learn about them,
Absolutely.
Just sharing some ideas and some things that are probably, how you have like certain things that stick with you forever. And at the time, we had elementary school in 6th grade. And then you went on, 7th grade was middle school. But we had an architectural dig that we did where you learned about history, you drew, you created, you said something about like draw patch, reminded me of that. And then you went and buried it. And another class went and did the architectural dig and found it. And then they all collaboratively shared the historical pieces that they found. But it really brought a lot of interest for us as students just to be more engaged in history rather than just reading about it and, either drawing something or whatever. And it just kind of made us think a little bit more, and it was more active. It was great. But I love the idea of having some of these things where you're actually making the kids do something to be part of it.
Right, because it's very easy to get lost in just ideals, which are not as concrete, especially to younger children.
And I think especially the younger kids are more visual, So, just a thought.
I just want to thank you for making this an honest reflection of 250 and not a whitewashed reflection of rah-rah, we're the best kind of thing. I think, I'm not surprised that we did this. I just want to show my appreciation and highlight it. I think our families will really appreciate that. Our community will really appreciate that. We have done a lot of great things as a country, and we have a lot of warts, and we have to examine all of it constantly, hopefully not just at 250, but at 251 and 252, and examine where we, looking at some of the founding documents, where are we as a nation as related to what they envisioned, and how far we need to go, because we have a ways to go still. And I would have been expressing different thoughts if we were playing it safe, and we're not, and I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mr. Hershey. Anyone else? Ms. Rice?
All right. I know I caught it, but I did read the document, though. Thank you for this. I really wanted to ask, outside of it being, just because it is our 250th celebration, what else kind of brought this on to spearhead academics to move in this direction? I mean, what is it that, I understand it's our anniversary, but what impressed upon us that we needed to highlight this?
I think it's a combination, Ms. Rice, of many things, but we felt that we could not let this moment go past without bringing it to our forefront and to have it as a significant part of our history. And so we want to make sure that we're communicating that to all of our stakeholders and to give our students the importance of just how major this is of an event.
Yeah, I think civic engagement or just understanding who we are as a country is very, very important at this time. The last question I just wanted to ask is, I saw the outline of the month and the North Carolina alignment in its theme of what's happening. I wanted to know how much of a deep dive have we done with our administrators to really highlight or stay with, do these themes and to make it a part of, it sounds like we're going to do it culturally wide across the district. Like how, because I know we have 203 schools, so I was curious just a little bit of how, what levels of accountability will we have to really show that this is important and that it's done. Just curious of how you guys are measuring it out to the district as a whole.
And I think we have to really and truly look at our implementation of what stakeholder groups need to hear this. And so therefore, that is our plan to look at from area superintendents, departments at central office level, as well as to the schools and our leads of those social studies curriculum in our schools to make sure that this is a message that we want. We haven't really talked about the metrics of accountability yet, other than just really and truly bringing this and highlighting it as an implementation that we want them to have the resources in order to be adequately equipped in order to commemorate the 250th anniversary.
Okay, that's it
Yes,
for me.
ma'am.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I did have maybe one or two questions. Well, first, I want to say thank you, and I think I echo some of what Mr. Hershey said. I think I really feel the learning model. I really feel the see me aspect in this, and allowing students, especially like that the activity that you all walked us through or engaged us in. It allows students to be seen from where they are and from their lens, and I can really appreciate that. And I had an opportunity to look over some of the resource documents, and I also love how we are, one of the things that I'm constantly asking about is how are we involving families? How are we getting the community involved? How are we bringing families in to share their stories? And so I can appreciate the activities and the resources that are listed here. I did want to ask, how does this impact grade level pacing and content of like social studies across the board?
Sure. So I think the answer is going to be, to a degree, nuanced on the calendar of the schools, the level of the school, and the way in which they choose to implement it. Some of the activities are very classroom specific, and so a 7th grade teacher is positioning it against their unique content. Whereas some of the ideas are more globally based and can be done across content areas or classrooms. I don't envision any of these activities taking away from pacing in a significant manner. It just would depend on teachers engaging the activity like we just did as a classroom opener, or utilizing some of their enrichment periods of time to engage kids further. It could be done in homeroom activities. It's really structured in such a way to allow for teachers to find the most structurally sound ways to implement the curriculum, or the materials rather, without disrupting the pacing and content that we've provided with them.
And the resources that are listed or that are provided, these are supplemental. So I guess my question is, the decision to use them or engage in the celebration at all is a site-based decision or a teacher decision?
Combination of both. A combination of both. And so therefore, we want them to have the resources, and depending upon where they are, and we have alignment to the standards of these resources, but it will be a combination of both. Combination of both.
And has guidance, or will guidance be sent to?
Yes, we will have guidance and the update written to principals. We haven't talked all the details of our level meetings at our senior leadership meetings. We have one next week. That is, I'm going to share that's an opportunity. And then we also, the following week, we have a committee that we work with our division of principals and assistant principals. And that is actually an email I shared with our chairs of that committee. Dr. Mariah Walker is one of them, offering an overview of this presentation with them. And that's typically a more intimate setting where they ask more questions and just go deeper, a little deeper in what guidance we have and how to support it.
All right. Well, if there are no further questions. Oh, Dr. Ng, I apologize.
Oh, no, I just wanted to also express, I love the idea of the Heritage Podcast. I just remember, I think it was like NPR had something like that, similar, like where they interview their parent, grandparent, and asking what their life was like. And I think that's a great thing to kind of link personally to the past, your family, and record it, because your parents, grandparents will not be here forever, and you have this record that you can hold on to for the future. So that's a great idea.
Any more questions or comments from the board? All right. Well, thank you all, and we look forward to seeing the fruition of this.
Thank you for engaging. Thank you.
Sorry about the on-the-fly question.
It's all right. You got us thinking on our toes.
Ms. Cooper, can we transition to the next presentation? We'll invite our Title I team to the table. We're going to have Dr. Burton to introduce her team as she leads us through this presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm always pleased to join you to share updates about Title I and the program and its impact. And I will also be providing some funding updates for you this afternoon. I'm so pleased to have with me two of our fabulous school leaders who are going to be talking about that impact and sharing with you what the impact has been for their respective schools as a result of participating in the Title I program. So during our time together, I'm just going to provide some key program efforts that support equitable education. Again, we're going to be talking about some small funding changes that have occurred as we plan for 26-27. And again, the two wonderful school leaders will be sharing and demonstrating the impact that funding has had on their respective schools. So as always, we recognize that Title I is a part of our 203 schools. We are not separate from them, and so therefore everything that we do and provide in terms of service and support must be aligned with our strategic plan. So when we consider priority one, high quality instructional core for all content areas, Sometimes people hear Title I and we think dollars and cents, but I want to just offer that it's what we do with those dollars and cents that makes the impact. And so our team works very closely with schools to make sure that we are working with staff in schools to be able to deliver and supplement the district efforts for high quality instructional core. For priority 2, again, student dispositions and well-being. A lot of the professional learning that Title I has provided on the PL days in the district and done by request per school principal has focused around student wellness and belonging and well-being. And so we're always keeping in alignment with what those aims are in respect to these priorities. And then lastly, priority 3, when we think about parent and family experience, the law does require Title I funded schools to implement strong family engagement programs, and so we do some things a little bit different, have some different expectations for family and community engagement, and so again, still aligned with the expectations in our strategic plan. So what is Title I? A federal program. We are part of ESEA right now, so it kind of depends on the legislation and what that name is. So formally, we were a part of No Child Left Behind. So as things evolve and change, the premise is still the same. Why we exist is still the same. So for Title I as a program, our role is to support students living in high concentrations of poverty. And regarding the funding, our funding should be used to supplement versus supplant. We may not replace or be in place of state or local funds. These are additional funds that allow us an opportunity for our schools to have extra resources, and I like to always say over and beyond in addition to what they're getting in state and local funding. And so just for your awareness, we work really hard in budgeting and allotting to our schools to ensure that with our budget, and we'll dig a little bit deeper into that a little bit later, but next year for 26-27, we have a slight increase in what we're allocating directly to schools. So almost half of our allotment will go directly to supporting classroom efforts in our schools. And the model that we use here in the Wake County Public School System is a school-wide model, which just means essentially that school leaders have the flexibility to assess their school improvement work as they're reviewing their needs to make sure that the funds are used to support all learners in our building, because I know that you will agree economic disadvantage does not equate academic deficiency. And so the funds are used to support every learner in our schools. Next year, we're increasing a little bit. This year, we served 58 Title I funded schools, and next year, we will be serving 62. So you may be wondering, how do we get that allotment? What variables come into play to determine the amount of funding that the Wake County Public School System receives? So there are a couple of variables at play. Obviously, I mentioned poverty, students living in high concentrations of poverty. But as the economy shifts, that's even a factor. Some of the schools that we will serve in the 26-27 school year have not been Title I funded in 7 or 8 years. So as things have changed coming out of the pandemic, jobs are more scarce. We're finding that more of our families are more eligible, and so that happens sometimes in determining our funding as well. The number of schools we serve impacts our budget and impacts the way we allocate resources, because if we are assuming more schools but there's no more budget, then sometimes that requires us to make minor adjustments. And then the student enrollment is a factor in determining school allocations, because we use that total school number in relationship to the number of eligible students to do that allotment formula. And so that's just a formula that's pretty basic, that is predicated on how many students are actually enrolled and then what percentage of those students are eligible for support via the poverty metric. So we're going to shift now into just giving a little overview of the funding, what we're anticipating, and to just kind of share a breakdown of that funding structure with you. So we are estimating, and we are using the word estimating, for the 26-27 school year, a little over $32 million. We are estimating this because early spring, late winter, we were notified that we would be receiving what is considered flat funding, which just says that we might expect about what we received in this current school year. So that is where that estimation is coming from, about what we expected and what we received this year. We're expecting about the same. Hopeful to get more, but what we've been told is that we could anticipate flat funding. So again, when we think about how that 32 million breaks down, over 70% of that is direct support to services to our schools. Almost half of that budget is directed to schools, as you can see from the graphic there. And more than 30% of that is invested in our early learners with pre-kindergarten. And that is to ensure that there is impactful support for students at the school and inclusive of our youngest of our learners. So if you can look at the graphic and can tell that what is left there is a very small portion of the budget, with only around 11% being dedicated to central services staff, those staff supporting directly in schools, and some central services staff like my team who are facilitating those school-based efforts. And then for our administrative purposes, we're only operating at about 6%. And the federal guidelines would say that districts may go up to 10%, and Wake has done a great job, I believe, of making sure that we are lower than that, therefore allowing most of our resources to go, again, directly to our students.
We have a question.
For the viewing public, can you kind of distinguish a little bit more between central services and administration?
Absolutely. Central services staff are our coordinating teachers, our instructional coaches, our people that are boots on the ground working with teachers, being thought partners with our school administrators. The administrative, that 6%, are people like me, the director of Title I programs, our other leaders that are not teachers. So that's the big distinction between that 11% and the 6%. Along with that 6% are other things like we have to factor into our budget, indirect costs, for example. So there are some other administrative costs that we incur as a program that are built into that 6%. Did that help?
That's fantastic.
Thank you for that question. So when we think about half of the budget going directly to our schools, I wondered if you might be interested in kind of understanding then what happens with a school's budget. How does that translate? How much of that is spent on different things? So if you look at the graphic, we've got 3 broad categories here, which are the most widely used categories and budget codes used in Title I when we're talking about school-based budgets. So we have salaries and benefits. And we can see from the graphic that about 85% of school-based budgets are dedicated to people. Our principals believe that it is the work of people that move the work that we need to do, not a specific program or supplies and materials, though those things are necessary, especially in some of our higher poverty schools. But our principals are dedicating the largest part of their school-based budgets investing in the people. And so you can see very small amounts for supplies in comparison, and then there's a small percentage there for services, and those would be things that are more contractual and not necessarily a good or a service through a supply or a personnel. So to the right of the screen, you'll see just some examples of, for this current school year, some of the additional positions that schools have used their school-based funding to support. And so that's just an example of some of the positions that our principals are afforded the opportunity to create months of employment in most cases, add to existing MOE that they have gotten from either state or local resources to ensure that their school has the support that they believe that they need. Yes, ma'am.
Let's talk a little bit about, if you can, your parent liaisons. That was something, well, so I guess I didn't bring it in context. Parent liaisons is something that years ago in Wake County schools I saw that we had began. I did not realize that we still were using that title and have them, and then we're like their positioning and what outcomes are we seeing with these parent liaisons. And maybe this is probably a later question, an offline question to answer. I'm curious as the level of training that they are receiving, because if they're being paid months of employment to do this, I'm curious as to how much of liaisoning they can actually do and how free can they be to support families, and how much is it really, we're not talking about doing or saying things to cause harm, but we're talking about sometimes speaking truth to power and being able to advocate to really be a real parent liaison, which is the work that I've done in the past, right? So I'm really curious with our parent liaisons and some of the challenges that we're having, I hope I'm making sense, how much can they really say and do to make the months of employment that they are receiving effective? So I'm interested in that. We may not can't answer that here, but I am looking for someone to give me what that looks like. What are their guidelines that they can and cannot do within that parent liaison role? Because sometimes being a parent liaison is telling a parent some things that may be tough to hear. Yeah.
Thank you for lifting that up. I would like to be able to come back and bring you all of that, because that was a loaded question with a lot of components, and I want to make sure that we break that down for you. What I will tell you is that the schools that are funding this position, it can tend to look differently at each school because no two schools are the same. And our school leaders work very closely with them to make sure that they are in place and meeting the needs of families. So for example, at one school, in this particular case, there are high numbers of students who speak a second language, and so they've been very intentional about the person that filled this position. And this person is very active. It's a year-round, multi-track year-round calendar, and this person makes herself available to be able to provide support to families so that they're always connected with what's happening in the schools. But happy to bring that back to you.
Yeah, and even if not bringing back, but sending me an email or the board an email, particularly for me as it explores AIM 10 with parent liaisons, right? Since we're talking about the strategic plan and priority 2, as it relates to AIM 10 is very important to me. Because I love the analogy that you used, and we understand that families of that nature receive quite a bit of support. But as we are trying to eliminate overrepresentation, I would love to hear anecdotes around where have we been effective in that area with families in doing so in support, whether it be BIP programs or plans or whatever it is that they're doing. How are we dismantling and eliminating this overrepresentation that we're constantly seeing from data year after year? So that's really, to be more succinct in what my request is, how are we doing that with AIM 10?
Okay, noted.
Thank you.
Dr. Burton, I also have a question. For the general public that's listening, can you break down a little bit more the months of employment? Like I know that it may vary from school to school and from position to position, because some employees may be 12 months, some may be 11, 10.
Yes.
So can you like roughly tell us like how many teachers does that equate to, or roughly how many literacy coaches does that equate to? And is it per school, or is it all will it be all 62
So what you see for teacher, for example, that 1336.5, that is the number of MOE that we're funding across the 58 schools that we currently serve.
Okay.
So at one school, they could be building for example, three 10-month additional positions.
Okay.
But that same school could also be funding an additional 2 months to add to something that they already have to extend that position for longer service at the school. So it's not always a full 10-month position or even a half 5-month position. Sometimes if they are a year-round campus and let's say that the state or local resources have provided for them 6 MOE, then they may add to that using Title I resources. So each school really is just different in assessing what their needs are and how much of their funding they decide should be dedicated to MOE and investing in the people.
Okay, and then my follow-up to that is, how do the numbers in terms of positions, how do they compare to your non-Title I schools? Like, for example, I was just speaking to a ESL teacher yesterday, and she was telling me, and she teaches at a Title I school, she was telling me that they have the same number of, let's just say, instructional coaches as a non-Title I school. Why would that be if we know that the Title I school is going to have the greatest needs?
So I'll start with sharing that the reminder that Title I operates from a supplemental approach.
Okay.
So if state or local has provided X number of MOEs as the baseline,
Right.
then Title I schools may add to that, but that is a may. And our school leaders are the ones who are the budget managers at the school level to make that decision.
So it's a site-based decision?
Yes.
Very good.
Ms. Rice?
Thank you, Chair Gordon. Just to follow up with looking at MOUs again, and I'm just using, like what you said it's a supplemental space, so we're talking about 91 months of employment, a supplemental, which possibly can equate to 7 more 12 months of employment if we were just to give everybody 12 months, which we know school is really only in 9, right? So we're looking at maybe 7 people to add additional to support 253 schools.
So the parent liaison position is school-specific, site-based. So this breakdown on this particular slide is what the school-based budgets are and how the schools have elected to use those budgets. So
Right.
those positions are in specific schools. They are not staff that is centrally funded that support all 52 schools, if that clarifies.
So how do they go about, or how do we go about choosing which school? So I think I heard you say, so the administrator determines if they want to utilize these, is it, do they have a certain amount of months of employment that they can use?
So we provide the allotment to the school, the dollar amount that each school is awarded based on that formula, how many students are eligible in relationship to how many students are in the whole school.
Okay.
Once a principal has that allocation, then the principal is deciding how much of that budget they would like to dedicate to months of employment.
Okay, got you. Huh. I'm going to stop asking questions. I'm going to stop right
We're not
there.
going to be able to get, go ahead.
Right.
All right, so we've talked about the funding, and so now I'll just share a little bit about Title I eligibility and how we determine as a district which schools are eligible for Title I funding. So beginning 24-25, the district adjusted the metric that we use to help us determine who will be Title I eligible. Prior to 24-25, we used the free and reduced lunch application, the household application, as that metric. So beginning in 24-25, we transitioned to something called direct certification, and it is almost what it sounds like. The families that are eligible through direct certification are directly certified through channels like the Department of Health and Human Services. So these are families who have been determined to be eligible based on their participation in governmental programs and resources. So one of the things that was noted when we made this change was that this does eliminate the need for families to complete those meal applications, and particularly for really vulnerable families who may be highly in transition, often like foster care or homeless or migrant status. So it kind of eliminates that barrier. The other positive thing about the direct certification metric is that once they apply for one resource, they're entered into a database, and that database prompts them to be eligible for other additional resources. So not just limited to the need-based food programs like SNAP or TANF. So that report comes directly to our Child Nutrition Services Department, and I receive that report monthly so that we're able to kind of see how our school numbers or percentages are ebbing and flowing. And then on March 1st is what the district has as our pull date. So on March 1st, that is the data that we use to see if our schools would be eligible for the subsequent school year. So in thinking about that eligibility, there are some thresholds of benchmarks for poverty that schools must meet to be considered to be eligible. So for our elementary schools, they must at least be 40% poverty to be eligible, and that was the current threshold this year. That threshold is not changing for 26-27. Our middle schools have to have at least 40% poverty as well. Again, that threshold was in place for this year. It will not be changing for 26-27. And the same holds true for our high schools. That threshold is 75%. For eligibility for our high schools, the same metric in place this year, and that will be in place for 26-27. So this is the what is used to determine if they are eligible based on that poverty percentage. Once we've determined who those schools are, then we must provide those per pupil allocations directly to individual schools. And this is what we use to do that. So the per pupil allotments for next year, you can see on the slide. And one of the things to note is that there is a very equity-focused approach to doing this. The higher percentage of poverty, the higher your per pupil allotment will be. The lower your poverty percentage, you're on the lowest end of that per pupil allotment to schools. So again, the per pupil amount, how many scholars do we have in the building that were eligible, and then that is applied times the per pupil amount, and that is how our schools receive their school-based allocations. So I'll share with you, because you heard me say that we are increasing our number of Title I funded schools to 62 for next year. And so these are the participating elementary schools. What I've just noted for you, just to put it in perspective, is if you see a star beside the school, that is one of our 28 Title I low performing schools. And if it is highlighted in orange, then those are schools that my team has looked at multiple data points to give these schools in orange more frequent support, different support. And so the schools in orange are what we call our partner priority schools, because they get a little more priority in terms of support and frequency of support in those buildings. So these are the elementary schools for 26-27. And these are our middle schools for 26-27, and then we serve one high school who met that 75% threshold, and that high school is one of our alternative high schools, Longview High School. We have for next year 6 schools into status, 2 schools exiting status, which brings us to that number of serving 62 schools for next year. So programming and support. We've talked about funding, but how do we physically support schools? What are the programming efforts that make up our program? So what's key for Title I? You heard me share that about 30% of the budget goes to support pre-kindergarten. Lots of professional learning for our schools in alignment with our school improvement plans and what is being done for schools and offered to schools on professional learning days, in addition to school-based professional learning that occurs on site. Family engagement, as you know, is a huge part of the way that we support schools and our families. Title I does also support our McKinney-Vento program, as well as supporting foster care transportation efforts. There are, at the school level, that support at the school can be whole school support. Principals sometimes ask for us to deliver professional learning at staff meetings or on days that they have designated work days for professional learning. Sometimes our principals ask for us to be thought partners and identify particular PLCs that may require additional support, or it could be down to the teacher level and identifying a beginning teacher perhaps that a principal has determined they would like a little more support for those staff members. Summer learning resources. We encourage our schools to use their allotments and resources to make sure that we're communicating with families prior to exiting for the summer or during track out periods. If you are on the year-round calendar, we encourage our schools to make sure our families know about resources that are available and also are providing some resources for families to have at home to support learning over the summer and at home. And then finally, several of our schools dedicate a portion of their budget to providing tutoring opportunities for our students to receive some additional support, particularly some of our students that may have interventions in place to give them some additional support. So when we think about all of that support, I mentioned PLCs, that we often support with planning during those PLCs. That could be instructional planning, helping our teachers really connect to that learning model. It could be making sure that standards are aligned and that there is rigorous instruction in place for all students. And then we're very fortunate as a department to have staff who can go out with our schools and be thought partners around family and community engagement as well, in planning those events and then being on site when those events occur to support our schools. And then I mentioned the variety of professional learning that we provide to our schools as well. Specifically with family engagement supports, there are federal guidelines, quite a few of them, that operate around the beginning of the school year. And so that's a large part of the way we ensure our schools have things in place and that they're partnering with our families and really listening to the voice, like helping to create what that policy looks like in addition to our district policy, but what that policy looks like school specific, and then the homeschool compacts as well, and then year-long planning for all of the events that we're doing with families in our school, specifically around linking to learning and the research, the evidence-based approach from the dual capacity framework that says if we're not engaging our families around how to support learning at home, then it's a missed opportunity. So there are some guidelines and regs in place by which we measure if schools are doing family engagement in that evidence-based approach. And then again, just supplemental efforts. It could be that at our district-wide Family and Community Engagement Summit, we always make sure our Title I funded schools have extra other opportunities that they can engage in, and we do that across a lot of different ways. We are currently, as you know, in deployment with our Panorama survey, and so additional funding is used from our central base funds to make sure that all of our families have a paper copy of that survey because many of our students in Title I funded schools, the phone numbers change, the emails change, and we want to hear every family's voice, so we dedicate additional dollars to make sure that there are paper surveys so that we're providing that supplement to the district's electronic deployment of that survey. So when we think about the data that we collect and how that data translates into impact, we look at a lot of different types of data, right? Obviously, your baseline data, which are more of your EOG, EOC type data, but we also progress monitor using progress monitoring data that occurs more frequently, and that is helpful for us as a department to monitor, because when we're being thought partners with schools, we're able to talk with schools about the particular assessments that they're engaging in at this time. So we're talking apples to apples and not talking something differently than what our schools would be focusing on. Surveys are a large part of what we do, and we're really pleased as a team that our team convenes twice a month, but one of those meetings is dedicated to data. And today, while I am with you, my team is engaging in that data meeting and are looking at how we have selected those partner priority schools that I mentioned to you, and we're thinking through if there will be additions to that list for next year. So we are constantly using not one specific metric of data to support our schools, but we're using a variety of things when we consider how data does impact improvements over time. So when we think about that, last year we were with you all to share a data research and accountability study that was done on the impact of Title I. And one of the things that that report illuminated was that there is noted sustained improvements across our schools and our schools' ability to exit that low performing status. And then ultimately, we want our schools not only to exit, but we want them to retain that status. We want them to exit and sustain that and not go back into low performing status. So you see we've had several schools that exited that status in 23-24, but they were able to sustain that and did remain off that list in 24-25. So when we think about across all of our schools, that about 55% of our schools met or exceeded that growth expectations. And so while we recognize that there is much more work to be done, we want as many of our schools to be exceeding that growth as possible. And so we're continuing to work with our schools around ensuring that we are able to exit that low performing status and retain that exited status. As we are considering the impact, because we can do lots of things, but we want the things to be impactful. So we wanted to share with you two schools that are with us today to talk about the impact of Title I as a program and what they've been able to do with the resources that impacts the data for their schools. So we will first introduce Principal Rhonda Curtis, that is the principal of Van Dorn Springs Elementary School. And while Ms. Curtis is sharing the awesome improvements that have been made at Van Dorn Springs over time, you will note some of those improvements on the slide, one of which is exiting that low-performing status, and they remained and sustained that status in 24-25. So, Ms. Curtis.
All right, good afternoon. Yes, I'm Rhonda Curtis, proud principal at Van Dorn Springs Elementary School. We have worked really, really hard to do things a little bit different, and I'm hopeful that we will be able to sustain that growth. We have a goal of becoming a B school, so making history for our kids, and that's important because when we work together as a staff to make history, then we're giving our children a chance to make history for themselves, for their families, to paint a different story than what they know or what they dream, what they can imagine. And so how do we do this? Title I support is a huge part of it. So you heard Dr. Burton talk about principal flexibility. We get the allotment, and then, well, what do we do with it? Well, there's people like me who look for the very first slot that we can possibly get. We sign up for that slot and we already have our plan. Plan number one is we're going to buy as many teacher months as possible. Why? Because there is no replacement for a good, caring, loving teacher, right? A teacher who knows how to support kids, move kids, and grow kids. So that is always number one for us. And I sit on the meeting and I squeeze out the last piece of point a month that they will let us get. And so most years, that's somewhere between 3 to 4 classroom teachers for us. Why is that important? It reduces class sizes. It allows teachers to have a caseload that is more manageable. It allows us to put more hands on kids. When we are able to look at the data and get those kids into small strategic groups, we can make a difference. One of the big things that we did going into that 23-24 school year is we took some knowledge that we gained through principal meetings, through a school visit that I did in Charlotte, and adjusted our master schedule. And basically, we realigned our people so that our staff, every professional teacher in our building, including the IF, the literacy coach, everybody, intervention coordinator, all of those people are aligned to 1-2 grade levels max. And they really dig in with the teachers to understand the data, to understand the children's needs, and you will see them in classrooms with kids. I visited a kindergarten classroom last week. It just made my heart happy. You know why? Because there were 3 groups going on in that classroom, and every one of them had a professional adult sitting in front of them. Why does that matter? Because when we can really see what the kids need, when we can really differentiate the instruction that's provided to them, then we can make that difference. And so thank you, Title I, for helping us to make that impact. How else does it matter? Well, professional development, I don't remember if that was on the list or not, but we are allowed to allocate funds towards professional development, or more specifically, substitute teachers that can cover classrooms to allow teachers to engage in professional development. And so what we do a few times a year is allow teachers to do the work, right? They get the 1-hour PLC. We have, in addition to that, we have collaborative planning twice a week. So 3 days a week, planning time, our teachers are together as a team, digging into the data, digging into the lessons, and making sure that we are strategic and aligned. But 45 minutes to an hour, including potty breaks, dropping off kids, picking up kids, goes by fast. And so a few times a year, we allow the teachers 1 day. And sometimes they may take that in half-day increments. It just depends on the needs of the team. But we allow them to sit down with the coach. Sometimes they will bring in staff from Central Services, from the Title I department, to help us drive that focus, to understand that data, and really be strategic from more of a long range. And that's time when we study which students belong in which groups. How are we adjusting groups based on the data? Is what we're doing working? If not, how are we going to change it and why? We use some of our funding, some of our support to provide daytime tutors in addition to after-school tutoring. We have both daytime and after-school tutoring going on in our building right now. And again, that's providing that strategic small group support. We tend to focus our tutoring resources towards our bubble students. And when we call them bubble students, they are those babies who have the potential. They are right there on the cusp and just need a little bit of additional support to cross the threshold towards proficiency, towards showing that they have mastered a particular standard. And the teachers look at their data to determine which kids are they going to target for those. Okay. In addition to that, we have taken advantage of some of the professional development opportunities provided through Title I and Central Services and really targeted specific trainings that we thought would have the greatest impact. So I want to say it was 2 years ago, we had representatives from each grade level go to Cary High School and participate in that language-rich classroom training with Ms. Gilliam. And then we had her come back to the school building and offer a miniature version of that training to additional staff. At the district level, we've also participated in things like Hook Your Learner. So the past 2 years, during that first district level PD day, we sent a large group to that training. And the real masterpiece behind both of those trainings is they focus on those lever 2 strategies where we are engaging kids meaningfully. We're having kids utilize that academic language when they're speaking to one another so that they are the ones who are digging in and doing the work. And we do it in different ways because it holds the children accountable and it helps them engage in the work. And when you're the one who is talking and participating rather than just kind of regurgitating, you're learning more. From a family engagement side, we've also really changed the way that we do family engagement over the past few years. So through ideas that we've learned through conferences that have been attended over the years, we, by both myself and our assistant principal, we adopted a data-driven model of family engagement. So basically we call them SOAR nights because we're the Eagles and our babies soar. They soar in their behavior, they soar in their academics, all the things. But we have, like on our reading night, we actually print out the M-Class report for every parent. And we explain to them what those colors mean, what that running man means. And we give them clear strategies and tools that they can use at home, often in the form of games, to reinforce the skills that their child needs. So if it's decoding, then we help them get resources for specific decoding patterns that their child needs help with. If it's comprehension, then we give them fun games and examples of questions that they can ask their child about any books that they're reading. We oftentimes provide books to support the kids. Most recently, for our math SOAR night, we provided that math data. So understanding how's your child performing, how am I on time? I'm not talking too much. Okay. How their child is doing based on the NKT data, based on the STAR data, based on NC check-in data. How is my child doing? Where does my child need help? And how do I support them directly? Giving them resources for that. And we had STEM activities that we brought in, so hands-on STEM activities connected directly to the curriculum to support our students, providing our families, again, with flashcards, games, things that they can do to extend the learning. And I am finished. Do you have any questions?
Very good. I don't have any questions, but Van Dorn Springs is one of my schools, and I had the pleasure of visiting. And I will tell you something that Principal Curtis did not mention was the way that when you walk into that school, you can automatically feel the climate and the culture. I mean, it is undeniable. I mean, we had kids who were coming out. I guess they were told that I was coming, and so we were running behind schedule because I had several schools that day. And we got there a little later, and they were like, "You didn't come see us," and so they were super excited. But that's something that I will save that question till the end. But that is also something that I think is a misconception with Title I schools, is that we have to rule with an iron fist, and it affects the climate and the culture of the school, and that greatly affects not only our students but our staff, and that's going to affect teacher retention, that's going to affect academic success. And so I just wanted to speak to that because that is something that I distinctly remember about Glendora Springs and about your campus and about your staff and about the kids. And so I just wanted to lift that up as well.
Yes, Ms. Rice.
Well, thank you for sharing that, because I was going there, hearing your story and listening to you and seeing the process you made. My question was, what is your process of supporting student well-being? And so I can tell, because a lot of times when we see numbers happen, but I always care about the wellness process to get students there, right? The wellness process to get the teachers engaged, because like you said, when it's this iron fist coming down and we're not taking care of people's emotional wellness and well-being, nobody cares about the numbers, because by the time they got the numbers, they're so burnt out, they put in a transfer because they're ready to go. But, so thank you for sharing that and for hearing what's really going on.
If you want me to.
Oh, please answer the question.
All right.
I love your enthusiasm, which tells me you're excited about what you do.
Thank you. So we have a couple of things in place. We have something called, well, first, when we talk about people, because when we've got the right people in place, they are able to make sure that equity and access is there. So we have 2 dynamic school counselors that work real closely with our school social worker, as well as our school psychologist, and they call themselves the SIS team. And so in addition to them, one of our SIP committees is called the CDAT team, or the Conscious Discipline and Action team. And they really study the principles of conscious discipline and teach them to our staff. So in all of our classrooms, you'll find things like safe spaces. You'll find things like wish well walls. These are structures that are in place in every classroom that support student well-being and that help children feel welcome and valued. Even as students enter their specials classes, you will see each kid being individually greeted. A spin-off of that is our counselors have created something called an Equal Service Club. And so out of that, we've got student ambassadors, we've got a crochet club, we have got kids that go down and read with our first graders from 4th and 5th grade. And there's a whole application process for this, right? They have to get teacher recommendations. There's jobs for everybody. There's literally a crew that writes thank you notes. There's an affirmation bracelet club, like you name it. Or if the kids have an idea, the counselors tend to make it happen. And so when I have purpose, when I have a job, when I have meaning, when I have a place,
I belong.
Then I belong, and I'm going to be more willing to work for you and to enjoy that process.
Glendora Springs for Professional Development, 203 schools right there.
Thank you, Ms. Curtis, for sharing. Everything that you said is a testament for what you see on this slide, because this is one of the schools that was able to exceed that growth in students in overlapping categories. And we know that is because of that belonging that you and your staff are instilling in your children. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, so next up, we're shifting to Mr. Aaron Marson, who we're going to spotlight East Millbrook Middle. And so, Mr. Marson, take it away.
All right. Good afternoon. I am not as exuberant, and I was like, I'm listening, I'm like, I gotta step on my game.
You're here.
Yes. So I think we do a lot, and what we do is invest in people, and so that is the purpose of Title I, in my opinion. And so everything that I do is related to people. Because student learning outcomes don't happen by programs, they're influenced by people. And I like what Ms. Rice said earlier. She was like, well, what do you do for the well-being? I make sure that I have highly qualified, supported teachers. Because when teachers are supported and they are happy, kids are supported and they are happy. And that is, everything that I do goes right to that. We have 4 big rocks at our school, and one of the most important is supported to belong and safe to learn. When students are supported, they feel safe. And once they feel safe, that's where we see that academic achievement really start to rise. So I'll talk about last year because that's where all that data came from that you're looking at. We hired 5 additional staff members. And for a middle school, that's kind of a big deal. Because 5 extra people, that's 50 of those months of employment that you saw up there. There was 1,300 for the district, and we took 50 of them, so I am very appreciative of y'all. That allows us to do the instructional coaching. And one of the things that I thought of when I was listening to our colleagues speak earlier was around like lever number 1 in the instructional design plan for the district is making sure that we have standards-driven instruction. And if we think about the job market from 2001, when I started my teaching career, and 2025, the candidate pool is very different. And people who went through a teacher education program then versus those who went through a program now, we are getting great people. They just didn't start out on the pathway to become teachers. So it is our responsibility to make sure that they know what they're going to do and what are the standards and what are we actually assessing. It goes, I have 2 children in the Wake County Public Schools, so thank you to all the people who serve them. But when I look at a report card, I'm like, is this telling me what my kid knows, or is it telling me did they follow your rules? Because I don't care if they follow your rules sometimes. Behavior, yes. But I want them to learn the things that we are tasked with them learning. And so standards-driven instruction is so important. And if you get those from our amazing academics team over there, it's a lot of reading. And it's hard to decipher. Like you almost need, so we have instructional coaches that help our teachers determine what is it that they need to know at the end of this day, at the end of the week, and at the end of the unit. Another thing that we do is we work on Lever 2, which is those high-yield instructional strategies, which is one of our other big rocks at East Millbrook. And so we utilize Kim's team, Dr. Burton's team. They come out and they're helping our teachers to teach effectively. So we have professional development within our school. Our teachers choose different learning pathways. And so they choose a pathway, so we give the teachers voice and choice. They attend that PD for the entire year, and her team is supporting us in providing that to them. And then our teachers are honing that skill and that craft, and a high-impact instructional strategy is going to be more effective in students remembering what the teachers are teaching. And the last thing there is Lever 3, which is the see me and know me, because when you can lower the class size, the teachers know the students. So in a middle school, if you're a core teacher and you teach ELA, for example, if you have 30 kids in a class and you have 3 classes, you have 90 kids. But if we can get that number down to 21, then you're teaching 63 kids in a day instead of 90 kids in a day. And that makes a difference because teachers know the students, they know where their strengths are, and we build on the strengths. And so that is another, just of the alignment that the Title I department gives us to the district's core missions, vision, and beliefs is amazing. Everything else I think I said here. And I appreciate them, and I appreciate what you guys do to support the Title I office. So thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions over this? You guys want to go around or? Okay, Dr. Ng.
Yes, thank you so much. I loved all the information today. One of my questions was, well, actually I had 2 earlier on. When we're talking about deciding where the resources go and when and how often can principals request resources?
Excellent question. We are right now in the thick of completing individual school budget meetings with all 62 schools. Our plan is to conclude those by the end of April, which is a couple of days away. We're on target to meet that. And so that's the initial step when they are thinking, what do I think think I need for next year. Now, we all know when next year comes, there might be changes. So at the beginning of the school year, our office provides for our schools a year-long calendar of dates. And one of those things that's included there is a monthly fund transfer opportunity. So each month, our principals can be assessing if there's a need that came up and they don't currently have funding in a particular budget code for an expenditure, then they're able to monthly submit budget transfer requests to our team. Those transfer requests must go to the state of North Carolina because they are doing something different than the state was initially told. But it goes to the state approves that transfer, and then our principals are able to reallocate funds differently than perhaps they did initially. So there's a monthly opportunity to do that. Prior to the grant being approved, our schools are afforded the opportunity to build positions as needed, and consequently, if they have built a position and it is no longer needed in November, our principals may request to end date that position, and then they're able to absorb the dollars and cents that were wrapped up into those months of employment. Did that answer?
Yes, I mean, that's where all that flexibility comes in, right?
Yes, sir.
And my second question was, you mentioned that there were schools that exited Title I. Did I hear that right?
Yes. Every year, there is the possibility or the potential that schools that we served in a current year may no longer be eligible, and that happens if their poverty percentage does not reach that threshold. So we did have 2 of those schools that will be exiting status at the end of this year, so they will not be funded next year, and those 2 schools are Brooks Elementary and Poe Elementary, because their poverty percentage did not reach that 40% that was needed to qualify them to be Title I eligible.
And is there kind of a off-ramp way of providing some support for them as they transition out of it?
Another great question. There used to be, and that process was called grandfathering, but now that term means something totally different. So we aren't permitted, once they exit status, they have exited status, so we aren't permitted to provide that bridgeway per guidelines.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. This, I think, is for Dr. Hill. So in our budget discussions, we talked about last week the 14 tutoring positions from NCEC going to, well, maybe not 14 positions, but they were going to 14 schools, and 11 of those are Title I. And I know we asked you last week about how we would continue to support our Title I schools if that were to go away, and I'd like for you to please answer that again.
Yes, ma'am. Of those 14 schools, we're looking at how they would use their Title I funds, as well as the possibility of restart funds. But when Dr. Burton said they have opportunities to continue that tutorial program, that will be an avenue of opportunity for them to continue those current NCEC tutorial programs. May not be on the same scale, but they will have some flexibility with that.
With your Title I funds? Is that how I understand it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you, maybe a little out of turn, but I did that a few years ago. We had a wonderful NCEC. We had one who was wonderful for 2 years, and we did allocate a 50% IA position in order to bring her back in the spring for a 3rd year. We don't currently have her, but we did do that.
To have that flexibility.
Okay. So I don't want to say that that item in the budget discussions doesn't give me some angst, but I think I hear you saying it could potentially be okay covered with Title I funds.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Great question. Any more further questions? Okay, well, I have a couple, maybe. I'll try to listen to them. thank you for this. This is always a refresher and wealth of knowledge for us, and helps us in our decision-making. But on slide, I think it was 12, where you have the schools, you mentioned, was it 12?
13 and 14.
Oh, 13 and 14, I'm sorry. You mentioned priority support schools. Can you say more about what that support looks like? What does that mean for teachers? What does that mean for principals?
Absolutely. So the partner priority schools are in the list of the 28 Title I low performing schools. But I would offer the explanation that the schools that we are serving as partner priority have a greater need, why we've identified them as priority. So what does that look like? What does that mean for schools? So we have created a menu of supports, and so it is the frequency. In the schools that you see highlighted in orange, our team is in these schools weekly. So the support is not haphazard, it's not by chance, it's very continuous, so that they're making a greater impact in working with the schools. So for example, I might have a staff member who is at Wilburn Elementary, for example, and maybe the principal has identified a need to work with a particular PLC, maybe it's third grade. Then our staff member is in that building every week with that particular PLC providing support. So it is the frequency of that support that looks differently for our schools that we've prioritized. It does not mean that we're not serving our other schools by any means, but we're just in these priority schools more often, giving them more because the data has identified the need for doing that.
And how do you balance, because I will tell you, and I know this is not the case for every Title I school, but I have heard from a couple of my schools that are Title I, that are identified as Title I, where it is very evident where that the more support looks like in terms of being in the building every week, and the morale of the teachers is starting to diminish because they feel like we are giving it our all. And sometimes the external factors that affect academic success are not taken into play. So how do you balance, I guess, the support piece, but at the same time, the morale and reassuring the educators who are in that building, like, we hear you, we know that you all are doing all that you can. How is that balanced?
And Ms. Gordon, we really and truly have been looking at this area from the support that the regional model teams provide to these schools, as well as in conjunction with Dr. Burton's shop as well. And how do you balance that we can make sure that the capacity building is in fact there? At the same time, when I'm building Dr. Burton's capacity, I want her to be in the driver's seat in order to benefit from the coaching that I'm providing. And that relationship piece. And so therefore, it's never I gotcha or what are you not doing wrong, but how can we best help support and build your capacity. So it has to be that balance, and that's one area that we're looking at as a priority to make sure that the support that comes from central services is not overtaxing. So how do we balance that from the initial beginning so that when the regional team support, as well as in conjunction and in alignment with Dr. Burton's team, how can we make sure that we are maximizing that, but making it a balance as well?
Okay, and in that same vein, that same thought process, on slide 20, from that lens, I'm speaking from an educator lens, but then on slide 20, we talk about the data that's used to monitor impact and student success. Can you talk a little bit about what does the frequency look like as far as assessing students in a Title I school versus a non-Title I school? Because I will tell you, my experience has been, it is a constant, like it's everyday assessment. And so, again, what does that balance look like, and how are we supporting the balance between making sure that we're getting the data, but also supporting the whole child and their well-being, and thinking from, they are always being assessed because we need the data to make moves.
And I think that's the powerful connection between that teacher and their students, and how they're showing them really and truly, you're just showing me on a given day how intelligent you are, and how, if you're not given, how I can really and truly give you the support in order to master those standards. But it has to be a balance and not overtaxing. I really and truly wish that, that we could really, not on any given day at the end of the year, assess everything that has happened throughout the entire school year, just in that one testing day. But we're looking at a progress of monitoring. And when we focus on the growth of our students, where were they in August or at the beginning of their year-round track, or where they were, how much growth have they had? And I think that's going to be a key conversation with our families of how we're sending that message that it is a balance, and it's not what they're given to do on one particular day.
Can I ask either Principal Marson or Principal Curtis, how do you all achieve that balance within your building?
So for me, a lot of it is PLC driven. So yes, they have to do their progress monitoring. They have to do their benchmark assessments and their instant check-in. But the way that we're checking on a weekly basis or a monthly basis, et cetera, that's driven by the PLC. So they're determining, are we using an exit ticket? How are we presenting it to the kids, especially our younger babies? They don't totally understand the concept of a pretest or a pre-assessment, and so some of them do get a little bit worried when they're taking those pre-tests. So just really how you present it to them. Ultimately, the teachers need to know, what do you already know, so they can maximize the way that they are, the time that they have to teach to the children. But I think a lot of it goes down to teacher discretion and presentation, so that the kids don't feel so overwhelmed.
I'd say that everything you see up there, all schools are doing those same assessments. So I've never been asked by the Title I office to do more assessments, but I will say that the shift that we made with support of that office is the goal setting that our kids do. So if you come, I invite you, please come visit. You walk in and those kids are excited to show you their data notebooks because everyone is making growth and progress and they cannot wait. I went to Ms. Robinson's math class this morning at 7:35, 7:40. So if they're watching, shout out to them. And they were like, guess what, Marson? And I was like, what? And they're like, 86% of this class mastered the learning objective from last week. And I'm like, they're excited to tell you what they've learned. And that shift in language from did I learn something to student learning outcomes is different, because a student learning outcome is measuring the teacher effectiveness, not the students like I can learn or I can't learn. So come visit, and I would love to show you these data notebooks.
I would love to. Funny story. I was a camp counselor with the Raleigh Parks and Recreation at East Millwood.
Oh, were you?
In high school, yeah.
All right, you can show me around.
I remember the campus, but I'm sure it has changed.
I have one quick question.
Yes, Ms.
Principal Marson, you had mentioned that the funds were able to give you 50 months, which you used for 5 extra staff. Is that just for the 1 year? Because in the slides, it looks like you had a tremendous amount of growth, and it specifically says since, what is it, 2015, 16 year? It's a pretty big deal, right? So I'm just asking, the extra bodies in the classrooms, is that something that you are contributing that amount of growth to? And the reason I'm asking is because we are in the middle of, waiting for a budget, And we all agree that more bodies in the classrooms make a difference. So it's just one thing I wanted to clarify, if you felt that that was a big movement.
Yeah, it will, for me, it's always going to be the people. And so the people in those classrooms supporting kids, and then again, back to, are we supporting those people who are in the classrooms? Those are,
So is that extra staff like teacher assistants, or are they specifically like instructional coaches?
Ours are 100% classroom teachers.
Teachers, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think that is the conclusion of our. Not hear you looking at me like.
I thought Ms. Rice had a
Oh, Ms. Rice, did you have a question?
Yeah, I did, but I saw it on his slide. You know, I always have to lift up, but I see it in their slides.
You sure? Go ahead.
The
You have a
percentage point. No, I'm always going to ask about our black students, because that's a part of our data, so, but it's in both their slides.
Okay.
With this percentage points.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming and speaking with us. And thank you, Dr. Hill. Thank you. We will adjourn at 6:14.
Well, Ms. Beck.
Great job, guys.